There's something almost magical about standing in front of an ancient painting, one that has survived wars, revolutions, and the relentless passage of time. The brushstrokes, still vivid after centuries, seem to hold whispers of the artist's hand, secrets tucked beneath layers of pigment and varnish. Antique art isn't just decoration, it's a time capsule, a silent witness to history's most extraordinary moments. And sometimes, when we look closely enough, these treasures reveal stories so astonishing, they rewrite everything we thought we knew. Picture this: a dusty attic, a forgotten crate, and inside, a masterpiece lost for generations. Or a routine restoration that uncovers a hidden signature, proving a long-disputed theory true. These aren't just lucky accidents, they're moments where the past reaches out and grabs us, reminding us that history is alive, waiting to be rediscovered. From long-lost artifacts buried beneath ancient cities to paintings concealed beneath other paintings, the world of antique art is full of surprises that defy imagination. Each discovery is a puzzle piece, slotting into the grand mosaic of human creativity and ingenuity. Today, we're embarking on a journey through 30 of the most remarkable finds in the history of antique art. These aren't just objects, they're stories of artists working in secret, of treasures hidden from plunder, of mysteries that lingered for centuries before finally coming to light. Whether you're an art lover, a history enthusiast, or simply someone who thrills at the idea of uncovering the unknown, these tales will leave you in awe. So settle in, because we're about to dive deep into the shadows of time, where every brushstroke and chisel mark has a story to tell. The past is calling. Are you ready to listen? The story of the Salvator Mundi reads like an art historian's wildest dream. A painting, long dismissed as just another imitation, suddenly rising from obscurity to claim its place as a genuine Leonardo da Vinci. For years, it passed through auctions and private hands, labeled as the work of a follower, its true identity obscured beneath layers of grime and overpainting. Then came the painstaking restoration, where experts peeled back centuries of neglect, revealing delicate sfumato shadows, the haunting depth in Christ's eyes, and those unmistakable touches of Da Vinci's genius. The moment it was authenticated, the art world erupted. How could something so significant have been overlooked for so long? But the Salvator Mundi's journey didn't end there. Its record-breaking sale for $450 million in 2017 wasn't just about the price, it was a reminder of how easily masterpieces can slip through the cracks of history. Think about it, this painting survived wars, changing hands among kings and collectors, even vanishing entirely for decades before resurfacing in a Louisiana estate sale. And here's the thrilling part: if a work by Leonardo himself could be mistaken for a copy, what other treasures might still be hiding in plain sight? Private collections, forgotten attics, even museum basements could hold artworks waiting for the right expert, the right technology, the right moment to be rediscovered. The debate around its authenticity only adds to the mystery. Some scholars still question certain details, arguing over brushwork or provenance, proving that even the most celebrated rediscoveries aren't immune to scrutiny. Yet that's the beauty of antique art. It invites us to look closer, to question, to wonder. Every crack in the varnish, every faded pigment tells a story, and sometimes, as with the Salvator Mundi, that story rewrites history itself. Now, let's turn to another masterpiece that vanished for centuries, only to reappear under equally extraordinary circumstances. A painting so daring, it was once considered too controversial to display. Buried deep beneath the earth for over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army stood as silent guardians of China's first emperor, until that fateful day in 1974, when a farmer's shovel struck something far more extraordinary than he could have imagined. What emerged from the soil wasn't just an army of stoic clay soldiers. It was a burst of color, a revelation that shattered our monochrome vision of ancient art. These warriors weren't always the muted earthen figures we see today. Originally, they dazzled in brilliant crimsons, emerald greens, and deep purples, their armor and faces painted with startling realism. The tragedy: those vibrant pigments began vanishing almost the moment they were exposed to air. Archaeologists watched in horror as centuries-old paint flaked away before their eyes, leaving behind the ghostly gray figures we know now. But here's where science steps in as history's ally. Using advanced imaging techniques and chemical analysis, researchers have reconstructed the original palette, revealing an artistry as sophisticated as the sculptures themselves. The lacquer base beneath the paint, made from tree sap, was a technological marvel of its time, meant to preserve those colors for eternity. This rediscovery didn't just change how we see the Terracotta Army, it rewrote the narrative of ancient Chinese craftsmanship. These weren't mere funerary objects, they were a riot of color, a deliberate spectacle meant to awe. Imagine standing in that burial pit 2 millennia ago, surrounded by thousands of vividly painted soldiers, each one unique, each a testament to an empire's boundless creativity. And yet, the most haunting question remains: how many other ancient masterpieces have faded from view, their secrets lost to time? The Terracotta Army's hidden colors remind us that history is rarely what it seems at first glance. Just beneath the surface, there's always another layer waiting to be uncovered. Speaking of layers, our next discovery takes us to the heart of the Renaissance, where one of the most revered paintings in history hides a secret that's only just come to light. Beneath the melancholic blues of Picasso's The Blue Room, something unexpected lurked, a secret the artist himself had buried over a century ago. When conservators at the Phillips Collection X raided the painting in 2014, the ghostly outline of a bearded man emerged, staring back from beneath layers of paint. This wasn't vandalism or forgery, but something far more ordinary and fascinating. Artists often reused canvases out of necessity or changing vision, a practice called pentimento, from the Italian word for repentance. For a young Picasso scraping by in Paris at the turn of the century, every franc counted. A fresh canvas was a luxury, and sometimes yesterday's idea had to make way for today's inspiration. The Hidden Portrait offers a rare glimpse into Picasso's early struggles, a time when he oscillated between styles, searching for his voice. That bearded man, perhaps a fellow artist or a patron, was sacrificed to the swirling blues and greens of a bathing woman, a work that would later be celebrated as a cornerstone of his blue period. What's remarkable isn't just the recycled canvas, but what it tells us about creativity itself. Masterpieces aren't born in isolation. They're layered with false starts, discarded ideas, and quiet compromises. And this raises a tantalizing possibility. If the Blue Room hides one secret, how many other celebrated works conceal lost paintings beneath their surfaces? Van Gogh, Rembrandt, even Da Vinci were known to repurpose canvases. With advanced imaging technology, museums are uncovering these buried layers at an astonishing rate, each one a time capsule of artistic evolution. The next time you stand before a classic painting, remember, what you see might only be half the story. Now, let's shift our gaze from the depths of paint to the sands of Egypt, where a relic lost for millennia would reappear in the most unexpected way, while the Rosetta Stone rightfully takes center stage in the story of deciphering ancient Egypt, its lesser-known counterpart. the Decree of Canopus quietly reshaped our understanding in ways few appreciate. Unearthed in 1866 near the ruins of Tanis, this towering slab of limestone bears the same groundbreaking feature: inscriptions in 3 scripts hieroglyphs, Demotic and Greek. But here's where its story diverges. Dating back to 238 BCE, it predates the Rosetta Stone by nearly a century, offering an even earlier key to unlocking the past. What makes the Decree of Canopus so extraordinary isn't just its trilingual text, but the secrets it whispered to scholars. While the Rosetta Stone provided the initial cipher for hieroglyphs, this decree acted as a Rosetta Stone in its own right, confirming translations, clarifying ambiguities, and revealing nuances about Ptolemaic rule that its famous sibling couldn't. The text commemorates Pharaoh Ptolemy III's reforms, from adding leap days to the calendar to deifying his late sister wife, Berenice. These details might sound niche, but they're like finding a missing page from history's playbook, one that shows how politics, religion, and science intertwined in ancient Egypt. Yet for all its significance, the Decree of Canopus lingers in the Rosetta Stone's shadow. Why? Perhaps because its discovery lacked the dramatic flair of Napoleon's campaign, or because it arrived after hieroglyphs had already been cracked. But that oversight speaks to a bigger truth. History often celebrates the first breakthrough while forgetting the critical confirmations that followed. Imagine if every scientist ignored the second experiment that verified the first. Our understanding would be fragile, unverified. The Decree of Canopus is that vital second experiment, the silent guardian of historical accuracy. And that raises a tantalizing thought. How many other artifacts, equally pivotal, gather dust in museum storage or sit unstudied in private collections? For every Rosetta Stone, there might be a dozen forgotten steals, each holding pieces of the puzzle we don't yet realize are missing. Now, let's turn from stone to parchment, where a medieval manuscript's hidden annotations would rewrite the history of science itself. The Voynich Manuscript isn't just a book, it's an enigma wrapped in vellum, a puzzle that has defied comprehension for over 5 centuries. Discovered in 1912 by a Polish book dealer, this 15th century tome is filled with looping, alien script and illustrations so peculiar they seem plucked from a dream. Herbal plants that don't exist, astrological charts with unknown constellations, even naked women bathing in what appears to be green liquid. Every page pulses with deliberate strangeness. The text, written in a script unlike any known language, has resisted every attempt at decoding, from medieval cryptographers to modern supercomputers. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so tantalizing isn't just its indecipherability, but the sheer dedication behind its creation. Someone or some group invested staggering effort into crafting this artifact. The illustrations are meticulous, the script flows with rhythmic consistency, ruling out the idea of a random scribble. Recent theories range from the plausible to the fantastical. Could it be a coded medical text preserving forbidden knowledge in an age of persecution, a lost language from a vanished culture, or, as some skeptics argue, an elaborate Renaissance-era hoax designed to dupe a wealthy patron? The manuscript's resilience to modern analysis only deepens its allure. In 2014, researchers applying carbon dating confirmed its age, quashing doubts about a later forgery. Yet even AI, trained on hundreds of languages, fails to find patterns matching any known linguistic structure. This isn't just a locked door, it's a door with no visible keyhole. And perhaps that's why the Voynich Manuscript captivates us. In an era where technology can decode genomes and map distant galaxies, this humble book remains stubbornly silent, a reminder that history still holds mysteries no algorithm can crack. But here's the twist: the very impossibility of the Voynich Manuscript might be its greatest lesson. It challenges our assumption that every artifact should be understandable, that every mystery must have a solution. Sometimes the past doesn't exist to give us answers. It exists to remind us how much we don't know. Now let's journey from the unknowable to the unimaginably lavish, where a trove of golden artifacts lay hidden for millennia, waiting to rewrite the story of an entire civilization. Deep in the windswept plains of Kazakhstan, a flash of gold caught the light, not from the sun, but from the armor of a warrior who had lain undisturbed for 2.5 millennia. The Soccer Golden Man, unearthed in 1969 from a burial mound near Issyk, wasn't just a skeleton. He was a symphony of craftsmanship, his entire body clad in over 4,000 delicate gold plaques. Each piece, no larger than a fingernail, formed a shimmering second skin scales of a mythical beast, feathers of a bird of prey, all whispering of a culture far more sophisticated than history had remembered. For centuries, the nomadic Soccer people were dismissed as barbarians by the empires that wrote the history books, but this discovery shattered that bias with the brilliance of hammered gold. The warrior's headdress alone was a masterpiece, tall, pointed, adorned with stylized arrows and antlers, symbols of both war and the natural world. His belt bore intricate animal motifs, wolves and snow leopards locked in eternal chase, a testament to the Soccer's deep connection to the land they roamed. Even his boots were gilded, every stitch a declaration of status and artistry. What makes the Golden Man so revolutionary isn't just the opulence, but what it reveals about nomadic life. These weren't aimless wanderers, they were master metalworkers, traders, and storytellers whose influence stretched from Siberia to Persia. The gold's purity and the precision of its filigree suggest a society with advanced metallurgy, while the motifs mirror designs found as far away as ancient Greece, proving the Soccer were key players in a vast, interconnected world. Yet the most haunting detail lies in what wasn't found. Unlike Egyptian pharaohs buried with treasure for the afterlife, the Golden Man carried no hoard of riches. His armor was his treasure. This wasn't wealth stored away, it was wealth worn, a bold statement that prestige in this life mattered as much as the next, and that changes everything. It forces us to rethink how we define civilization, not by cities and walls, but by creativity and adaptability. Now, let's turn from the golden steps to a canvas that endured fire, war, and censorship, a painting whose survival is as miraculous as the art itself. The Ghent Altarpiece isn't just a masterpiece, it's a survivor. For 6 centuries, this towering work by the Van Eyck brothers has endured wars, fires, and no fewer than 13 documented thefts. But none of its trials were as dramatic as the disappearance of its lower left panel, the Just Judges, during the chaos of World War II. Swiped by a collaborationist Belgian banker in 1941, the panel vanished into the shadowy networks of Nazi art plunder, becoming one of history's most infamous missing treasures. For decades, it seemed lost forever until an art detective named Jacques van Beijeren took up the chase, following a trail of cryptic clues, false leads, and anonymous tips that spanned half a century. The breakthrough came in 2021, not in some secretive collector's vault, but in the home of a retired teacher who had unwittingly inherited the panel from his uncle. Hidden behind a false panel in his kitchen cupboard, the painting's discovery sent shockwaves through the art world. Here was a fragment of one of Europe's most revered altarpieces, preserved almost miraculously, its colors still vibrant beneath layers of grime. Forensic analysis confirmed its authenticity, but the real revelation was how close it had been all along, just miles from where it was stolen, passed down like a family heirloom among people who may never have grasped its true significance. This wasn't just a recovery, it was a reckoning. The Ghent Altarpiece's ordeal lays bare the brutal reality of art theft during wartime. The Nazis didn't just loot, they systematically dismantled cultural identity, shipping over 600,000 artworks to Germany in a campaign of erasure. Thousands like the Just Judges never made it back. Even today, an estimated 100,000 stolen pieces remain missing, tucked away in private collections, buried in archives, or worse, destroyed as inconvenient evidence. But here's what makes the Ghent panels' return so extraordinary. It proves that restitution isn't just possible, it's a moral imperative. The detective work behind its recovery, combining archival research, forensic science, and sheer persistence, offers a blueprint for other searches. Every brushstroke returned to its rightful place is a stitch in the torn fabric of history. And that raises an unsettling question. If a work as iconic as this could vanish for 80 years, what lesser-known masterpieces might still be waiting in the shadows? Now, let's turn from stolen art to a sculpture that was never lost, just misunderstood for centuries, until a chance discovery revealed its true revolutionary brilliance. The warm waters of the Mediterranean had cradled them for 25 centuries, their bronze bodies slowly encrusted with sea life until that August morning in 1972, when a snorkeler's accidental brush against something solid changed everything. The Riace bronze's two life-sized Greek warriors emerging from the depths off Italy's coast weren't just rare survivors of classical sculpture. They were time travelers, bearing secrets most art historians thought lost forever. Most ancient bronzes met grim fates, melted down for weapons or coins during wars, their artistry reduced to raw material. That's why these statues, named for the nearby village of Riace, sent shockwaves through the academic world. Their near-flawless preservation defied expectations. Submerged in silt and sand, the sea had acted as an unlikely conservator, protecting delicate details like individually inlaid ivory teeth, silver eyelashes, and copper lips, techniques described in ancient texts but rarely seen intact. When divers carefully raised them, the world finally glimpsed the vibrant reality of Greek sculpture. Not the cold white marble we associate with antiquity, but shimmering, lifelike figures once polished to reflect sunlight like living gods. But the bronze's true revelation lay beneath their surfaces. Advanced scans revealed something astonishing. Their hollow casting method was far more sophisticated than previously believed. Using a complex lost wax technique, ancient artisans had layered wax molds with millimeter-perfect precision, creating figures so balanced they could stand without supports. This wasn't just artistry, it was engineering genius, proving classical metalworkers rivaled Renaissance masters in skill. Their discovery also revolutionized marine archaeology. Before Riace, underwater sites were often looted or damaged by reckless recovery attempts. These statues prompted Italy to pioneer new preservation methods. Submerged artifacts are now documented in situ before delicate extraction, a practice adopted worldwide. Every shipwreck explored today owes a debt to those two warriors who emerged from the deep. Yet perhaps their greatest mystery remains unsolved: who crafted them? Some argue the musculature suggests Polykleitos, master of idealized proportions. Others note stylistic ties to Athens or Delphi. Without inscriptions, their origins linger in tantalizing shadows, a reminder that even the most dazzling finds keep some secrets locked away. Now, let's trace a different kind of connection, one that spans continents and cultures, where a single artifact bridges the ancient worlds of Rome and China. The sands of Egypt have surrendered countless treasures, but few are as startling as the serene stone faces of the Buddha gazing up from the ruins of Berenike. This bustling Red Seaport, once a hub of Rome's eastern trade, yielded a discovery that upended assumptions about the ancient world's interconnectedness. Among the pottery shards and ship timbers, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary, a 2nd century statue of the Buddha carved from Mediterranean marble, its draped robes blending Greek artistic traditions with the unmistakable serenity of Indian iconography. Nearby, a coin minted under the Indian king Kanishka lay beside fragments of Sanskrit inscriptions, silent witnesses to a cultural exchange far more vibrant than historians had imagined. How did these artifacts wind up nearly 5,000 miles from Buddhism's heartland? The answer lies in the monsoon winds and the daring merchants who harnessed them. Each summer, Roman ships laden with gold and glassware sailed from Berenike to India's Malabar coast, returning with spices, pearls, and ideas. The Buddha statues weren't merely decorative. They were spiritual anchors for Indian traders and settlers who formed a community in Egypt, their presence so enduring that local artists began adapting Buddhist motifs into their own work. A fresco fragment from Berenike's ruins shows a lotus throne nearly identical to those in Ajanta's caves, proof of cross-cultural pollination. This isn't just a story of commerce, it's a revelation about antiquity's cosmopolitanism. For centuries, historians depicted the Roman and Indian worlds as separate spheres, linked only by fleeting trade. But the Berenike finds paint a different picture, one where Buddhist monks may have walked Alexandria's streets, where Roman philosophers debated karma alongside Stoicism, and where art fused traditions as fluidly as spices blended in a merchant's sack. The Buddha's journey to Egypt reminds us that globalization isn't a modern invention. It's as ancient as the tides that carried those ships. Now, let's turn from stone to canvas, where a masterpiece's true creator remained hidden beneath layers of paint and centuries of mistaken identity. For centuries, Judith beheading Holofernes hung in galleries as just another Caravaggio, another example of the Baroque bad boy's flair for drama and darkness. But something about this particular painting never quite fit. The brushwork was bolder, the violence more visceral, Judith's grip on Holofernes' hair almost personal. Then came the forensic revelations, X-rays showing compositional changes typical of Artemisia Gentileschi's process, pigment analysis matching her palette, even the faint imprint of a smaller hand in the underdrawing. Suddenly, the truth emerged. This wasn't Caravaggio's interpretation of the biblical story. It was Artemisia's, a woman who didn't just paint violence, she'd lived it. Artemisia's life reads like a screenplay. At 17, she survived a rape trial that subjected her to torture to verify her testimony. Her attacker, another artist, walked free. Yet instead of silencing her, the trauma ignited her art. Look closely at her Judith and you'll see the difference. Caravaggio's Judiths hesitate, their faces conflicted. Artemisia's Judith, she painted the scene twice are relentless, sleeves rolled up, muscles taut. This isn't allegory, it's catharsis. The blood spurts in thick arcs, Holofernes' face contorted in genuine terror. Critics once dismissed such details as unladylike, but that's precisely the point. Artemisia painted like someone who understood power from both sides, the wielder and the victim. Rediscovering her authorship isn't just about correcting a catalog entry. It's about rewriting art history's biases. For generations, Artemisia was relegated to footnotes as Orazio Gentileschi's daughter, her works misattributed or ignored. Yet her technical mastery rivaled any male peer. Notice how the chiaroscuro sculpts Judith's arms, or how the fabric folds glow with trapped light. Even her compositions broke convention. In Susanna and the Elders, she painted the biblical harassment from the victim's perspective, a radical choice for the 1600s. What's thrilling isn't just that we're finally recognizing Artemisia's genius, but what her story implies. If her work could hide in plain sight for 400 years, how many other women's art still lurks beneath misattributions? museums worldwide are now re-examining their collections with fresh eyes, and every corrected label chips away at the myth that great art has a gender. Now, let's step from the shadows of misattribution into the golden light of a cathedral's hidden vault, where a treasure trove of medieval brilliance waited centuries to be seen. Beneath the soaring arches of Chartres Cathedral, hidden in plain sight on the stone floor, lies one of the Middle Ages' most enigmatic creations, a labyrinth spanning 42 feet across, its winding path tracing patterns so precise it defies the limits of 12th century mathematics. Unlike the crude mazes of earlier eras, this one is a masterpiece of sacred geometry, its 11 concentric circles forming a cosmic dance that draws pilgrims even today. But here's the mystery. No medieval text explains its purpose. Was it a symbolic pilgrimage for those who couldn't travel to Jerusalem, a meditation tool for monks? Or perhaps a celestial map encoding secrets of the universe in its curves? The labyrinth's design whispers of deeper intentions. Follow its path, a single, unbroken line stretching over a quarter mile, and you'll notice it's not meant to confuse but to guide. There are no dead ends, no tricks, just a slow, deliberate journey to the center and back. Modern visitors often assume it's a mere decoration, but medieval worshippers would have recognized its power. In an age when faith was physical as much as spiritual, walking the labyrinth barefoot might have symbolized Christ's passion, each turn a station of the cross. Some scholars even suggest the path's length mirrors the cathedral's rose window dimensions, tying earthbound steps to heavenly light. What's most striking isn't just the labyrinth's survival, it's how it reflects the cathedral's hidden language. Look up and the vaulted ceilings echo its circular patterns. The stained glass with its radiant blues seems to pulse with the same rhythm. This isn't coincidence, it's alchemy, where architecture, art, and devotion fuse into something transcendent. And that raises a tantalizing question. If something as bold as a 40-foot labyrinth could fade into obscurity for centuries, what other coded messages might lie unnoticed in the world's sacred spaces? Now, let's turn from spiritual mysteries to artistic deception, where a sculpture's beauty masked a secret that would scandalize the art world. Han van Meegeren's forgeries weren't just good. They were so convincing they rewrote the history of Dutch Golden Age painting. In the 1930s, his fake Vermeers, like the Supper at Emmaus, were hailed as long-lost masterpieces, celebrated by critics and displayed in museums as crowning jewels of 17th century art. Experts swooned over the rediscovered religious depth in Vermeer's oeuvre, never suspecting the canvases were still wet with modern paint. Van Meegeren's genius wasn't in flawless imitation, it was in exploiting what the art world wanted to believe. He studied Vermeer's techniques down to the craquelure, grinding his own pigments and baking the finished works to age them artificially. But his real masterstroke was psychological. He painted the Vermeer the experts had long theorized must exist, a biblical scene filling a gap in the artist's catalogue. The scandal erupted only after World War II, when Van Meegeren was arrested for selling Dutch cultural treasures to the Nazis. Facing treason charges, he dropped the bombshell. Those Vermeers were his own handiwork. To prove it, he painted another forgery under guard, Jesus among the doctors, using the same painstaking methods. The trial became a media circus, exposing how easily prestige and wishful thinking had blinded the art establishment. Technical analysis later revealed his tricks using synthetic resins to mimic old varnish, even adding powdered glass to make the paint glisten like genuine aged layers. Yet Van Meegeren's story isn't just about deception. It forces us to ask, if a forgery moves us as deeply as an original, does its value vanish when the truth comes out? His fakes didn't just fool experts, they stirred genuine emotion, proving art's power lies beyond mere provenance. Today, His forgeries are studied not as crimes, but as works of art in their own right, a paradox that still rattles the industry. Now, let's turn from deliberate deception to a relic that didn't choose to disappear, a sacred object that vanished from history's spotlight, leaving only whispers in its wake. The Amber Room wasn't just a marvel of craftsmanship, it was a symphony of light, a chamber where 6 tons of carved amber panels, gilded mosaics, and mirrored accents transformed candlelight into a golden glow so radiant. Visitors swore it emitted its own warmth. Commissioned in 1701 for Prussia's Charlottenburg Palace, the room was later gifted to Russia's Peter the Great, becoming the crown jewel of Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. For 2 centuries, it dazzled emperors and dignitaries, its walls whispering with the delicate chime of amber beads and the soft shimmer of gold leaf. Then came the war. When Nazi troops stormed the palace in 1941, they dismantled the room with chilling efficiency, packing its panels into crates labeled fragile. Witnesses later claimed the crates were loaded onto a ship, hidden in a Baltic castle, or stashed in a secret bunker, but the trail ends there. Despite decades of searches, not a single panel has resurfaced intact. The mystery deepens with each dead end. In 1997, a fragment of the room's intricate Florentine mosaic turned up in Germany, sold by a soldier's son who had no idea of its significance. In 2016, Polish divers probing the wreck of the steamship Karlsruhe, sunk in 1945, found crates matching descriptions of the loot, but inside lay only military equipment. Theories spiral like smoke. Some believe the room was destroyed in Allied bombings, its amber reduced to resinous puddles. Others insist it's buried beneath the ruins of a Königsberg castle, consumed by fire in the war's final days. The most tantalizing clue, a 1997 letter from a former Nazi officer claiming the crates were hidden in an abandoned silver mine near Weimar, but excavations yielded nothing. Even Stalin's secret police conducted their own fruitless search, convinced the room had been smuggled to South America. What makes the Amber Room's disappearance so haunting isn't just the loss of beauty, but the unresolved questions. Why would something so iconic vanish without a trace? Was it deliberately erased to conceal wartime plunder, or does it still lie hidden, waiting for some fortuitous stumble? Reconstructions like the painstaking replica completed in 2003 offer glimpses of its former glory, but they can't replace the original's whispered history. The room's fate forces us to confront how easily even the most magnificent treasures can slip through history's cracks, leaving behind only echoes and longing. Now, let's turn from a treasure lost to war to one preserved by disaster, a manuscript that survived the fury of a volcano. Its words literally burned into eternity, buried beneath 30 meters of volcanic ash. The Herculaneum Scrolls waited nearly 2,000 years for their voices to be heard. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, the intense heat carbonized an entire library of papyrus scrolls in the seaside villa believed to belong to Julius Caesar's father-in-law. These weren't just casualties of disaster, they were frozen in time, their ink sealed beneath layers of charcoal-like crust, too fragile to unroll without crumbling to dust. For centuries, scholars could only dream of what philosophical treasures might be locked inside. Then came the 21st century's technological magic. Using a revolutionary technique called X-ray phase contrast tomography, scientists can now peer inside the scrolls without physically touching them. The method works like a superpowered medical scan, detecting subtle density differences between the ancient ink and papyrus. Early findings have already upended assumptions previously unknown. Texts by the philosopher Philod must discuss music, rhetoric, and even the nature of pleasure, offering fresh glimpses into Epicurean thought. But the real excitement lies in what's still hidden. This villa's library may hold lost works by giants like Sappho, Aristotle, or even Euripides, their words preserved by the very disaster that seemed to destroy them. The implications stretch far beyond Herculaneum. If this technology can resurrect texts from carbonized lumps, imagine what it could do for other, unreadable, relics-burned medieval manuscripts, waterlogged Dead Sea Scroll fragments, or even the melted wax tablets from Pompeii's ruins. Each one could be a time capsule, waiting for the right combination of light and algorithms to speak again. Yet the scrolls also pose a haunting question: how much ancient wisdom has vanished because we lack the tools to salvage it? For every Herculaneum, there are countless libraries lost to fire, war, or neglect, their contents surviving only as titles mentioned in other works. The scrolls remind us that history isn't just what's been preserved, it's also the ghostly absence of what hasn't. Now, let's turn from volcanic ash to golden sunlight, where a treasure hiding in plain sight rewrote the story of Renaissance artistry. Few masterpieces have been scrutinized as intensely as Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights. Yet even after 5 centuries, this surreal triptych refuses to surrender all its secrets. When conservators at Madrid's Prado Museum aimed infrared cameras at the painting's wooden panels, they uncovered more than just underdrawings. They found an entirely different composition lurking beneath the surface. Faint but unmistakable, the ghostly lines revealed a preliminary sketch of the central panel, one that bore little resemblance to the final work. Gone were the fantastical towers and bizarre hybrid creatures. In their place stood a simpler, more conventional paradise scene, with symmetrical architecture and orderly crowds. This wasn't just a tweak, it was a wholesale reimagining of Bosch's vision. What caused such a dramatic shift? Scholars have pieced together a compelling theory. The underdrawing matches styles seen in Bosch's earlier works, suggesting he began the garden with a familiar approach before abandoning it for something radically new. Perhaps a patron's changing demands forced the pivot, or maybe Bosch himself grew restless, trading tradition for the unbridled creativity that would define his legacy. The technical details only deepen the intrigue. Infrared imaging shows he didn't erase the first draft but painted directly over it, as if sealing away the old idea beneath layers of pigment. Some parts of the original composition even peek through in the finished work. The curve of a forgotten arch now frames a grotesque fruit, while an erased figure's outline shapes the posture of a sinuous demon. This discovery does more than illuminate Bosch's process. It shatters the myth of the solitary genius conjuring masterpieces fully formed. Here was an artist experimenting, revising, even doubting, just like any creator. The infrared scans also reveal practical clues. Pinpricks along the underdrawing's lines suggest Bosch used a tracing technique to transfer designs, a method common among Renaissance workshops. Far from diminishing his brilliance, these humanizing details make his final leap into the unknown all the more extraordinary. And that raises a thrilling possibility. If the Garden of Earthly Delights hides such secrets, what might lie beneath other iconic works? Museums worldwide are now scanning their collections, uncovering lost sketches, discarded figures, and even entire paintings hiding beneath familiar surfaces. Each one is a reminder that art history isn't set in stone. It's a living conversation, one where even the most studied works can still surprise us. Now prepare to step from the realm of hidden sketches into a chamber where gold gleams from every surface, a tomb so lavish, its treasures redefined an empire's legacy deep in the arid plains of northern Peru. Where the wind whispers across ancient ruins, a team of archaeologists brushed away centuries of dust to uncover something extraordinary, a burial chamber glittering with gold. This wasn't just any tomb. It was the final resting place of the Sican lords, a pre-Inca civilization whose mastery of metalwork rivaled the Aztecs and Maya. Inside, the skeletons of noble warriors lay adorned with ornate golden masks, their hollow eye sockets staring eternally upward, while chest plates etched with intricate deities reflected the flickering light of the researchers' lamps. But the real marvel, these weren't mere decorations. Each piece was a technological marvel, hammered from alloys of gold, silver, and copper, then treated with acids from local plants to create dazzling surface effects, a technique modern metallurgists are still trying to replicate. What makes the Sican discoveries so revelatory isn't just the opulence, but what it tells us about a culture often overshadowed by its Inca successors. The Sican weren't just skilled artisans, they were innovators. Their workshops produced ceremonial knives with blades thin as paper yet strong enough to slice through flesh, and headdresses with feathered plumes made entirely of hammered gold, each strand individually articulated to catch the light. Most astonishing of all was the burial posture. The nobles were interred upside down, their heads pointed toward the earth, a practice scholars now believe symbolized a return to the underworld or a connection to subterranean deities. Yet the tomb's greatest treasure might be its silence. Unlike the Inca, the Sican left no written records, so every artifact must speak for itself. A golden cup depicting a god with winged eyes hints at a cosmology where the divine mingled with the avian. A necklace of shell beads and emeralds traces trade routes stretching from the Andes to the Amazon. Even the tomb's location, nestled beneath a pyramid aligned with solstice sunrises, suggests a society deeply attuned to celestial rhythms. But here's the twist: the Sican's brilliance may have been their undoing. By the time the Inca rose to power, the Sican had vanished, their wealth likely making them a target for conquest or their resources exhausted by relentless metallurgy. Their legacy, though, endures in the most unexpected places. Modern Peruvian jewelers still use their lost wax casting techniques, and the iconic Tumi ceremonial knife, a symbol of national pride, bears the unmistakable imprint of Sican design. Now, let's journey from the golden tombs of Peru to a canvas that survived the chaos of war, revolution, and a daring escape across borders. A painting whose survival is as dramatic as the history it witnessed. The story of the missing Fabergé Eggs reads like a detective novel penned by history itself, a tale of unparalleled craftsmanship, revolution, and the enduring mystery of treasures scattered. To the Winds, commissioned by Russian Tsars Alexander III and Nicholas II as Easter gifts for their wives and mothers, these 50 imperial eggs were more than just opulent trinkets. Each one was a mechanical marvel, crafted by the House of Fabergé with gemstones, enamel, and gold hiding miniature surprises inside. A tiny replica of the royal yacht, a singing bird automaton, even a working model of the Trans-Siberian Railway. But when the Bolsheviks stormed the Winter Palace in 1917, the eggs, like the Romanovs themselves, became casualties of a shattered empire. Some were sold off to fund the new regime, others smuggled out by fleeing aristocrats, and a handful simply vanished into the chaos. Today, 7 of these masterpieces remain unaccounted for, their whereabouts fueling decades of speculation. One egg, the 1889 Nécessaire, surfaced in a flea market in the mid-20th century, bought for scrap gold by a merchant who had no idea of its significance. Others weren't so lucky. The 1888 cherub with chariot egg, documented in old inventories, disappeared without a trace, its last known location a Paris auction house in the 1920s. Then there's the 1897 mauve egg, described in letters as adorned with lilac enamel and diamond lilies, a piece so delicate, experts fear it may have been dismantled for its gems. What makes these losses so haunting isn't just their monetary value. It's the intimacy they represent. These weren't state treasures, they were personal tokens of affection, each designed to capture a private moment in the imperial family's life. The 1912 Zervich egg, for instance, contained a portrait of the young heir Alexei, whose hemophilia shadowed the dynasty's final years. To hold one of these eggs is to cradle a fragment of a world that no longer exists, where artistry and empire intertwined. Yet hope persists. In 2012, a scrap metal dealer in the American Midwest nearly melted down a golden egg he'd bought at a flea market, only to discover it was the long-lost 1883 third imperial egg, valued at over $33 million. Its survival against all odds begs the question, how many more might be hiding in attics, forgotten vaults, or even plain sight? With each passing year, the trail grows colder, but the allure of these lost masterpieces ensures the hunt will never truly end. Now, let's turn from vanished treasures to hidden messages etched in stone, where a cathedral's walls conceal symbols waiting centuries to be understood. Winchester Cathedral's soaring Gothic arches have drawn pilgrims for nearly 1,000 years, but it's the smallest markings, those hidden in shadowed corners and forgotten crevices, that tell the most human stories. During a recent restoration, conservators kneeling to inspect the base of a pillar noticed something extraordinary: hundreds of faint scratches covering the stone, invisible to any casual glance. At first glance, they might seem like random damage, but look closer. These are deliberate carvings left by medieval hands. Ships with billowing sails, intricate labyrinths, even stick figure knights jousting with lances, each one a silent message from the past. What makes these graffiti marks so remarkable isn't their artistry, but their intimacy. Unlike the cathedral's grand stained glass or sculpted saints, these weren't commissioned by bishops or kings. They were etched by ordinary people, masons, pilgrims, perhaps even children leaving their mark on a sacred space. Some symbols hold deeper meanings. A recurring V shape near doorways likely stood for Virgo, invoking the Virgin Mary's protection. A crude sundial scratched into a pillar may have helped monks track prayer times. Then there are the personal touches, initials intertwined with hearts, a sketched horse, perhaps a traveler's prized mount, even a comical face sticking out its tongue, proof that humor transcended the centuries. Technology has unveiled even more secrets. Multispectral imaging revealed faded charcoal sketches beneath the stone, including a stunningly detailed stag that must have taken hours to draw. But the most poignant discovery, tiny handprints, some no larger than a child's palm, pressed into the soft mortar centuries ago. Were they left by playful youngsters accompanying their parents to Mass? Or grieving parents memorializing lost children? These unassuming marks transform the cathedral from a monument of faith into a living scrapbook of humanity. Yet the graffiti also hints at darker histories. Near the crypt, several stones bear deep, frantic-looking crosses, possibly apotropaic marks meant to ward off evil spirits or plague. Others show ships in storms, perhaps carved by sailors giving thanks for survival. Each scratch is a frozen moment, a whisper from someone who walked these same aisles when the stones were new. Now, let's turn from these humble scratches to a relic that defied destruction through sheer resilience, a treasure not hidden in shadows, but blazing in plain sight through history's darkest storms. The caves of Qumran held their secrets for 2,000 years, their dry, still air-preserving fragile parchment against the ravages of time, until a Bedouin shepherd's errant toss of a rock shattered the silence in 1946. What he stumbled upon would become one of the 20th century's most astonishing archaeological finds: the Dead Sea Scrolls, a cache of more than 900 ancient Jewish texts hidden in clay jars, their Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek inscriptions miraculously intact. Among them were fragments of every book of the Hebrew Bible except Esther, some dating back to the 3rd century BCE, centuries older than any previously known biblical manuscripts. Holding these delicate pages, scholars could finally glimpse the unmediated voice of antiquity, free from centuries of scribbled revisions and translations. But the scrolls were far more than just biblical relics. Alongside familiar psalms and prophecies lay entirely unknown works, apocalyptic visions, community rules, and cryptic commentaries that painted a vivid portrait of a radical Jewish sect, likely the Essenes, who may have authored or collected these texts. One particularly haunting passage, the War Scroll, describes an epic battle between the Sons of Light and Sons of Darkness, complete with detailed battle formations and divine interventions. Another, the Copper Scroll, lists 64 locations where staggering treasures of gold and silver were supposedly hidden, though whether these were literal or symbolic remains hotly debated. The diversity of these writings shattered assumptions about ancient Judaism, revealing a landscape far more complex and varied than historians had imagined. The scroll's survival is itself a marvel. Nestled in the arid darkness of the Judean desert, shielded from moisture and light, the parchment avoided the decay that consumed most ancient texts. Even more astonishing, many were written on animal skins so thin they resembled tissue paper, yet the ink remains shockingly legible. Modern technology has unveiled further secrets. Multispectral imaging has recovered faded letters, while DNA analysis of the parchment traces the scroll's origins to specific herds of goats and sheep, offering clues about their geographic journey. Yet controversy has shadowed the scrolls since their discovery. Early scholars monopolized access for decades, fueling conspiracy theories about suppressed revelations. When the full corpus was finally published in the 1990s, it sparked fierce debates. Do some scrolls hint at Christian-like beliefs predating Jesus? Could certain passages challenge long-held theological doctrines? The truth is, we're still unraveling their mysteries. Every digitized fragment, every new translation adds another piece to the puzzle. From the quiet of those desert caves, we now turn to the thunder of war, where a Renaissance masterpiece would endure bombs, bullets, and a daring rescue that bordered on the miraculous. Michelangelo's Madonna of Bruges should have been an obvious target for Nazi looters, a priceless Renaissance masterpiece, small enough to transport, celebrated enough to dazzle Hitler's planned Führer Museum. Yet as German forces advanced on Belgium in 1940, the marble Virgin and Child vanished from their chapel in Bruges Church of Our Lady, leaving only an empty alcove behind. What followed was a cloak and dagger operation worthy of a spy novel, one that hinged on the courage of a few determined individuals and a stroke of sheer audacity. The rescue began with two unlikely heroes, a local priest named Father Jacques and a Belgian army captain named Jean de Smet. Recognizing the imminent threat, they orchestrated a daring escape, wrapping the delicate sculpture in mattresses and smuggling it out of the church under cover of night. But their real masterstroke was the disguise. They loaded the Madonna onto a Red Cross truck, banking on the Nazis' reluctant respect for the humanitarian symbol. For 3 tense days, the truck rumbled toward the French border, passing checkpoints where a single curious soldier could have unraveled the plan. Once across, the sculpture was hidden in a castle in the Pyrenees, where it survived the war alongside other evacuated treasures. Yet the story doesn't end there. In 1944, retreating German troops somehow located the Madonna and seized it anyway, spiriting it away to a salt mine in Austria. It was only recovered a year later by the famed Monuments men, who found it wrapped in dirty blankets, unharmed but for a single chip on the Virgin's nose, a wound that speaks volumes about the chaos of those final war months. What's astonishing isn't just the sculpture's survival, but the layers of risk people took for it. Father Jacques and de Smet could have been executed for their deception. The monument's men braved front lines to track it down, and all for what? A block of carved marble. That's the heart of this story. Art isn't just valuable, it's valued, enough to inspire ordinary people to extraordinary acts. The Bruges Madonna endures not just as a Michelangelo, but as a testament to what we'll sacrifice to keep beauty alive in dark times. Now, let's descend from the drama of wartime rescues to a quieter revelation, one that lay buried beneath a humble parish church, waiting centuries to shake the foundations of art history. The metal detector's shrill beep cut through the quiet English field in July 2009, signaling a find that would stun historians, a glint of gold not from a lost ring or coin, but from something more extraordinary. The Staffordshire Hoard, as it came to be known, wasn't just a collection of treasure. It was a time machine to 7th century Britain, revealing an artistic sophistication no one had imagined for the so-called Dark Ages. Over 3,500 fragments lay buried there, most of them military regalia, sword fittings, helmet decorations, even a gold strip inscribed with a biblical passage in Latin, possibly worn as a talisman into battle. But what truly took scholars' breath away was the craftsmanship. Delicate filigree work thinner than a fingernail, interlaced beasts with gemstone eyes, cloisonné patterns so precise they seemed spun from sunlight. This wasn't crude barbarian metalwork. It was the legacy of a culture that valued beauty as much as battle. The hoard's origins remain as mysterious as its burial. Unlike most treasure caches, it contained no coins or personal jewelry, just the stripped finery of warriors. Some theorize it was captured loot, hidden after a climactic battle between rival Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Others suggest it was a ritual offering, a sacrifice to the gods for victory or protection. The sheer quantity of gold, over 11 pounds, hints at the staggering wealth of these kingdoms, contradicting old assumptions about early medieval poverty. Even more telling, many pieces were deliberately bent or broken before burial, as if their power needed to be neutralized. What the Staffordshire Hoard reveals goes beyond aesthetics. These objects were status symbols, wearable propaganda proclaiming their owner's divine right to rule. A single sword pommel might represent months of labor by a master artisan, its intricate patterns mimicking the illuminated manuscripts being created in monasteries at the same time. The Hoard forces us to reconsider the Anglo-Saxons not as primitive warlords, but as patrons of a vibrant artistic tradition, one that blended Celtic spirals, Roman motifs, and Germanic animal styles into something entirely new. Now let's leap from the glitter of buried gold to the quiet revolution sparked by a painting, one that didn't just capture light, but helped unravel the very nature of sight itself. Johannes Vermeer's canvases have always shimmered with an almost supernatural light, but it wasn't until scientists peered beneath their surfaces with X-ray fluorescence that we understood just how extraordinary his palette truly was. Hidden within those tranquil domestic scenes, the milkmaid's apron, the delicate lace cuffs, the sunlit walls lay traces of pigments so rare they rewrote the story of 17th century art. Ultramarine, ground from lapis lazuli mined in Afghanistan. Indian yellow, rumored to be made from the urine of cows fed only mango leaves. Even tiny flecks of cochineal, a crimson dye extracted from Mexican insects, each jar costing more than a month's wages for most Dutch citizens. These weren't just colors, they were global commodities, proof that Vermeer's quiet Delft studio was a crossroads of empire. What's astonishing isn't just the expense, it's the logistics. Lapis lazuli traveled along the Silk Road, passing through Venetian merchants before reaching Dutch markets. Cochineal came via Spanish galleons from the New World, while Indian yellow likely arrived on Dutch East India Company ships. Vermeer, often portrayed as a reclusive genius, suddenly emerges as a man connected to vast trade networks, his art a silent witness to globalization's first wave. Scholars now speculate that his father, an art dealer, may have supplied these materials or that Vermeer traded his own paintings for them. Either way, the science reveals something profound. The Golden Age wasn't just Dutch, it was a collaboration of continents. But the real magic lies in how Vermeer used these pigments. Unlike his contemporaries who layered colors thickly, he applied them in translucent glazes, letting light bounce between particles. His ultramarine wasn't just blue, it was a luminous fog, achieved by mixing powdered lapis with lead tin yellow to create an optical vibration no single pigment could match. Modern conservators have even found traces of ground glass in his whites, a trick to make them gleam like actual daylight. This wasn't just painting, it was alchemy, transforming minerals and insects into illusions of life. Yet these discoveries raise a tantalizing question. If Vermeer had such access to rare materials, why are only 36 of his paintings known today? Some theorize that his slow, meticulous process, each glaze requiring days to dry, made him unproductive by commercial standards. Others suggest the cost of his materials bankrupted him. Either way, the chemistry of his art paints a portrait far richer than any biography. A man who poured the treasures of the world onto canvas, one precious grain at a time. Now, let's turn from pigments that trace trade routes to an artifact that traces nothing at all, a relic so enigmatic, its very existence defies logic. The storm-tossed waters off the Greek island of Antikythera gave up more than just broken amphorae when sponge divers stumbled upon a shipwreck in 1901. Among the corroded bronze statues and shattered pottery lay a lump of encrusted metal, no larger than a shoebox, its significance utterly lost on the salvage crew. Decades would pass before X-rays revealed the truth. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient Greek device so advanced, it rewrote our understanding of classical technology. Gears, dozens of them, arranged with a precision that wouldn't be seen again until medieval clockwork. This wasn't just an astrolabe or simple calendar. It was a mechanical cosmos capable of predicting lunar eclipses, tracking the 4-year cycle of Olympic Games, and even modeling the irregular orbit of the moon with a level of accuracy that would make Renaissance astronomers gasp. The largest gear, with 223 teeth, mirrored the exact Saros cycle, an 18-year pattern of eclipses known to Babylonian astronomers but never before mechanized. Tiny inscriptions, painstakingly reconstructed, served as a user manual for the heavens, explaining how to read the positions of planets against a backdrop of zodiac signs. What stuns historians isn't just the mechanism's existence, but its isolation. Nothing remotely comparable appears in the archaeological record for another 1,000 years. Cicero wrote of a similar device built by Archimedes, and recent scans confirm the Antikythera mechanism likely originated from the workshops of Rhodes, where Hipparchus, the father of trigonometry, may have influenced its design. But here's the haunting part. If Greek engineers could craft such sophisticated machinery in the 1st century BCE, what other inventions were lost to time? The ship carrying it was bound for Rome, possibly as loot from a conquered Greek city. Was this a one-of-a-kind marvel, or were such devices more common than we dare imagine? Modern reconstructions have only deepened the mystery. Using 3-dimensional imaging, researchers discovered previously hidden gears that modeled planetary motions with astonishing nuance. The mechanism even accounted for the elliptical orbits described by Kepler 2,000 years before Kepler himself was born. This wasn't just a tool, it was a philosophy cast in bronze, a physical manifestation of the Greek belief that the universe operated by knowable mechanical laws. Yet the Antikythera Mechanism's greatest lesson might be about fragility. Its survival was pure chance, a shipwreck preserving what fires, wars, and the decay of centuries erased elsewhere. How many other impossible technologies vanished without a trace? The answer may lie not in the dirt, but in the gaps between history's pages, where whispers of lost genius linger just out of reach. Now, let's turn from celestial gears to earthly harmonies, where the stones of a Gothic cathedral hide a secret that resonates through the centuries hidden in the rugged highlands of Ethiopia. The churches of Lalibela don't just stand as monuments of faith, they sing. Carved entirely from living rock in the 12th century, these 11 medieval sanctuaries are marvels of engineering, their interiors hollowed out with such precision that striking certain pillars and walls produces clear, resonant musical notes. This wasn't accidental. The builders, likely inspired by King Lalibela's vision of a New Jerusalem, designed the structures to harmonize with human touch, turning stone into an instrument of worship. Walk through the dimly lit passages of Bet Georges, the most famous of these churches, and you'll notice something extraordinary. The arches hum at specific frequencies, while the pillars emit tones that mirror the traditional scales of Ethiopian liturgical music. It's as if the very walls were tuned like a lyre, their vibrations echoing prayers across centuries. The secret lies in the rock itself. Lalibela's builders chose volcanic tuff, a relatively soft stone that hardens when exposed to air, allowing for both intricate carving and acoustic precision. Each church was sculpted from the top down, a method that required not just brute force but an intimate understanding of the material's sonic properties. Scholars believe the artisans used bronze chisels and olive oil to polish surfaces to specific thicknesses, creating zones that would vibrate at desired pitches. Some walls even feature hidden cavities that amplify sound, a technique later seen in European cathedrals but predating them by at least 200 years. What's most striking isn't just the technical achievement, but the spiritual intention. In Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, music is a bridge between earthly and divine realms. The church's singing stones literalize this connection, transforming architecture into a form of prayer. Pilgrims still gather here during major festivals, their chants blending with the stone's natural reverberations, creating a soundscape that feels almost otherworldly. Modern acousticians have measured these tones, confirming they align with ancient scales described in Ethiopian psalters, proof that the builders encoded their sacred music into the very bones of the buildings. Yet the mystery deepens when we ask, how did 12th century artisans achieve such precision without modern tools? Some theories suggest they used water-filled chambers to test resonance during carving, or perhaps employed stringed instruments to tune the stone as they worked. Whatever their methods, the result is a testament to human ingenuity, a place where architecture and music fuse into something transcendent. Now, let's shift from the echoing heights of Lalibela to the silent depths of the ocean, where a shipwreck's cargo would rewrite the history of art itself. The depths of the Caribbean have guarded their secrets for centuries, but few shipwrecks hold a legend as tantalizing as the San Jose, a Spanish galleon swallowed by the sea in 1708, its hull groaning with the weight. Unimaginable treasure. When researchers finally located its remains off the coast of Colombia in 2015, the discovery wasn't just a triumph of marine archaeology. It was the spark for a modern-day battle over who truly owns the past. Estimates suggest the ship carried up to $20 billion in gold coins, emeralds, and silver bars today, much of it plundered from the mines of Peru and Bolivia during Spain's colonial reign. Yet the San Jose's real value isn't measured in pesos or carats. It's a time capsule of an era when empires bled the New World dry to fuel their wars and opulence back home. Diving to the wreck reveals more than just scattered coins. The ship's very structure tells a story of desperation and defiance. Historical records describe the San Jose as part of a fleet fleeing British privateers when a gunpowder explosion tore it apart, sending nearly 600 souls and the wealth of nations to the ocean floor. Recent sonar images show cannons still protruding from the seabed, their bronze barrels engraved with intricate designs, while porcelain plates from China hint at the global trade routes that crisscross these waters. But the most poignant artifacts might be the simplest, personal items like religious medallions and navigational tools, reminders that this was a working ship filled with ordinary people caught in history's crossfire. The legal and ethical storm surrounding the San Jose rivals any maritime drama. Colombia claims the wreck as part of its cultural heritage, while Spain argues the ship remains sovereign property under international law. Indigenous groups in South America counter that the gold and gems were mined through their ancestors' forced labor, demanding restitution. Meanwhile, salvage companies and governments jockey for a share of the spoils, their high-tech robots poised to disturb a grave site that's lain undisturbed for 300 years. Underwater archaeologists warn that rushing recovery could destroy fragile artifacts, while historians plead for transparency, fearing priceless context could be lost in the scramble for profit. What makes the San Jose so emblematic isn't just its treasure, it's the unresolved questions it forces us to confront. Can gold tainted by colonial violence ever be exhibited neutrally in a museum? Does a shipwreck belong to the nation that built it, the waters that claimed it, or the descendants of those who mined its wealth? The San Jose's ghostly hulk, still untouched on the ocean floor, has become a mirror for our own era's struggles over reparations, heritage, and the dark legacies we'd rather leave buried. Now, let's turn from the depths of the sea to the quiet glow of a library lamp, where a single manuscript once nearly lost to time would shake the foundations of faith itself, hidden in the shadows of St. Catherine's Monastery at the foot of Mount Sinai. A treasure lay forgotten for centuries until a German scholar named Konstantin von Tischendorf stumbled upon it in 1844. The Codex Sinaiticus isn't just an old Bible. It's a time capsule, a sprawling parchment manuscript written in Greek around the middle of the 4th century, making it one of the earliest surviving complete copies of the Christian New Testament. Imagine holding a book that was painstakingly handwritten only a few generations after the last apostles died, its pages surviving Roman persecutions, theological wars, and the rise and fall of empires. What sets the Codex apart isn't just its age, but its startling differences from modern Bibles. Missing are the familiar chapter and verse numbers we take for granted. In their place, the text flows in unbroken script, a river of ink stretching across delicate vellum. Some passages present alternate readings, like the Gospel of Mark ending abruptly at verse 16, without the resurrection appearances found in later versions. These variations aren't errors, they're snapshots of a faith still in flux before centuries of church councils standardized the scriptures. The Codex also includes texts modern Bibles exclude, like the Epistle of Barnabas and the Shepherd of Hermas, reminders of how fluid the biblical canon once was. Preservation of the Codex is a saga in itself. The manuscript spent much of its life in St. Catherine's desert fortress, where the dry climate acted as a natural conservator. But its survival wasn't just luck, it was necessity. Monks scraped and reused some of its pages, creating palimpsests where faint traces of scripture still linger beneath later texts. Even the ink tells a story, iron gall mixed with soot, a recipe durable enough to outlast kingdoms. Yet the Codex's modern journey is tinged with controversy. Tischendorf took portions to Europe for study, a move some call preservation, others appropriation. Today, its leaves are scattered across institutions in London, Leipzig, and St. Petersburg, a diaspora that mirrors the fracturing of the early church it documents. Digitization efforts have since reunited the codex virtually, allowing anyone to zoom in on 4th century scribble corrections or the faint guidelines pricked into the margins. What resonates most about the Codex Sinaiticus isn't just its historical weight, it's the humanity etched into every line. The scribes' hands tremble in spots, their pens skipping where the vellum resisted. Some pages bear scorch marks, likely from candles lit by generations of monks studying through the night. This wasn't just a holy book, it was a living object, handled and cherished across 1600 years of faith and doubt. Now, let's turn from the quiet endurance of parchment to a canvas that faced a far more violent trial, a masterpiece that somehow survived flames, smoke, and the chaos of war to emerge as a symbol of resilience. The Bayeux Tapestry isn't just a historical record, it's a survivor. This staggering 70-meter-long embroidery, depicting William the Conqueror's invasion of England in 1066, has endured fires, revolutions, and even Nazi obsession, emerging each time with its vivid woolen threads miraculously intact. Woven just years after the Battle of Hastings, the tapestry was nearly lost during the French Revolution, when revolutionaries threatened to cut it into strips for wagon covers. But a local lawyer, recognizing its value, hid it away until the chaos passed. Decades later, it narrowly escaped a cathedral fire in 1842, rescued by quick-thinking townsfolk who rolled it up and carried it through the smoke. Then came World War II, when Hitler's forces seized it, intending to display it as a symbol of Aryan triumph, only for it to be smuggled to Paris and hidden in a basement until liberation. What makes the tapestry's survival so extraordinary isn't just its brushes with destruction, but its role as a cultural chameleon. To the Normans, it was propaganda, legitimizing their conquest. To the French revolutionaries, it was nearly scrap. To the Nazis, it was a trophy. Yet through every reinterpretation, its essence remained, a breathtakingly detailed narrative, stitched by anonymous hands where halberds clash, horses tumble, and Halley's Comet streaks ominously across the sky. Modern scholars still pore over its mysteries, like the enigmatic figure of Elphjeva, a woman whose presence in the margins hints at lost subplots. Even its creation defies expectations. Contrary to popular belief, it was likely embroidered by English artisans in Kent, not Normandy, their needles weaving subtle critiques of Norman arrogance into the borders. The tapestry's resilience mirrors the very history it depicts. Just as William's conquest fused Anglo-Saxon and Norman cultures into something new, the tapestry itself became a bridge between art and chronicle, between nations that once warred over the land it portrays. Today, preserved in a climate-controlled gallery in Bayeux, it faces a new threat: time. The linen backing grows brittle, the dyes fade, and conservationists race to digitize every stitch before the threads surrender to age. Yet even now, it pulses with life. Look closely and you'll see a baker's oven burning in the background, a dog chasing its tail, a soldier lifting his visor to drink from a river. Human moments frozen in thread, whispering across nearly 1,000 years. Now, let's journey from this medieval masterpiece to an artifact that spans even greater divides. A relic that didn't just survive history, but connected two worlds buried for centuries beneath the windswept plains of Afghanistan. The ancient city of Hadda yielded a secret that rewrote the story of art itself. A trove of Greco-Buddhist sculptures so striking, they seemed to defy time and geography. Carved between the 1st and 5th centuries, these stucco and clay figures blend the serene, meditative gaze of the Buddha with the muscular realism of Greek gods. their drapery cascading in Hellenistic folds, while their elongated earlobes whisper of Eastern enlightenment. One particularly haunting statue, the Solar Buddha, wears Apollo's sun rays as a halo, its face a perfect marriage of Mediterranean precision and Asiatic tranquility. How did such a fusion come to exist in the heart of Central Asia? The answer lies in the footsteps of Alexander the Great, whose conquests planted Greek culture like seeds across the East. Centuries after his death, the descendants of his settlers, the Bactrians, intertwined with Buddhist monks along the Silk Road, creating a cultural alchemy that birthed these masterpieces. The sculptures weren't mere imitations, they were conversations in clay. A bodhisattva might stand in the contrapposto pose of a Greek athlete, while a Heracles figure, club in hand, transforms into Vajrapani, the Buddha's protector. This wasn't just artistic borrowing, it was the birth of an entirely new visual language, one that would eventually ripple across China, Korea, and Japan, shaping Buddhist art for millennia. But Hadda's treasures nearly vanished forever. In the 1990s, the Taliban targeted the site for destruction, pulverizing countless statues with artillery fire. Miraculously, archaeologists later discovered a hidden cache of surviving pieces buried beneath monastery ruins, a deliberate act of preservation by medieval monks. The most poignant find, a fractured head of the Buddha, its gilded lips still curved in a smile, as if whispering across the ages that art, like faith, cannot be so easily erased. What makes these sculptures revolutionary isn't just their beauty, it's their proof that globalization isn't a modern invention. 2,000 years before container ships and the internet, the Silk Road was a highway of ideas where Greek chisels met Indian spirituality and traders carried aesthetics as freely as spices. The Greco-Buddhist synthesis reminds us that cultures don't collide, they converse, each leaving the other forever changed. Now let's turn from these ancient crossroads to a discovery much closer to home, an attic's dusty corner where a stack of yellowed papers held a fortune no one had noticed in a cluttered Virginia flea market. Between stacks of mismatched china and rusted tools, a small painting caught one woman's eye, not for its artistry, but its $5 price tag. The canvas, no larger than a sheet of paper, depicted a hazy riverside scene, its colors muted under layers of grime. She bought it on a whim, hung it in her kitchen, and forgot about it until a visiting relative, squinting at the signature, whispered two electrifying words, Pierre-Auguste Renoir. Experts confirmed the unthinkable. That flea market find was Passage Boards de Seine, a genuine Renoir lost since the 1920s, likely stolen from the Baltimore Museum of Art decades earlier. The painting's journey reads like an art world fairy tale, auctioned for $7 in a West Virginia junk shop, nearly discarded as a fake, then authenticated by forensic analysis tracing its canvas weave to Renoir's known suppliers. Suddenly, the humble kitchen decoration was valued at over $100,000, proof that treasure doesn't always hide in vaults or museums. Sometimes it's propped up between salt shakers and grocery lists, but here's the twist that makes this story more than just luck. Renoir himself was no stranger to obscurity. Early in his career, he traded paintings for meals, his work dismissed as unfinished or garish. That little riverside scene, it was likely painted en plein air, dashed off in a single afternoon as practice. The flea market Renoir reminds us that art's value isn't just in the name attached to it, but in the eyes of those who rediscover it. For every masterpiece hanging in the Louvre, there might be another tucked behind a thrift store mirror, waiting for someone to look twice. Which brings us to our final discovery, one that isn't just hidden but deliberately unknowable. A relic so enigmatic it resists every attempt at understanding. leaving us with more questions than answers high above the sun-baked plains of Peru, where the desert stretches endlessly under a piercing blue sky. Drones have peeled back layers of time to reveal secrets etched into the earth itself. The Nasca Lines, those vast geoglyphs carved into the desert floor 2,000 years ago, have long captivated the world with their enigmatic beauty. But now, thanks to modern technology, we know there's even more to the story. In 2022, researchers armed with drones and artificial intelligence uncovered over 140 previously unknown figures hidden in the landscape. Some are simple geometric shapes, while others depict humanoid figures, animals, and even a pair of hands stretching toward the horizon. The sheer scale of these designs is staggering. Some stretch longer than a football field, yet they're invisible from ground level, only revealing their full grandeur when viewed from the sky. What's truly astonishing isn't just the discovery itself, but what it tells us about the Nasca people. These weren't random scratches in the dirt. They were calculated, precise creations, likely made by removing the dark surface stones to expose the lighter earth beneath. The new figures suggest a far more extensive artistic tradition than we ever imagined, one that may have evolved over centuries. Some of the newly found geoglyphs appear older than the famous hummingbird or spider, their styles more rudimentary, hinting at a gradual refinement of technique. Others bear striking similarities to motifs found on Nasca pottery, linking these monumental earthworks to the culture's everyday artistry. But the burning question remains, why? Why devote such effort to creating images only fully visible from above? Theories abound, from astronomical calendars marking celestial events to sacred pathways for ritual processions. The newest discoveries complicate these ideas further. One particularly haunting figure, a humanoid with an elongated head and wide, staring eyes, resembles designs found in Paracas textiles, suggesting a cultural exchange or shared belief system across ancient Peruvian civilizations. Another, a sprawling zigzag pattern, aligns with underground water channels, fueling speculation that the lines served as a kind of map for vital resources in this arid landscape. The role of technology in these revelations can't be overstated. Drones equipped with high-resolution cameras and LiDAR sensors have allowed archaeologists to scan vast areas in minutes, spotting patterns invisible to the naked eye. Machine learning algorithms then sift through the data, flagging potential geoglyphs for human experts to verify. It's a marriage of ancient artistry and cutting-edge science, proving that some mysteries can only be solved when we change our perspective, literally. Yet for all our tools, the Nasca Lines retain their essential mystery. They remind us that the past isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a conversation to be joined. Each new figure adds another voice to that dialogue, another thread in a tapestry we're still learning to read. Perhaps that's their greatest lesson, that wonder and curiosity are as vital to understanding as any drone or algorithm. After all, the Nasca people left these marks not for us, but for the ages, and the ages still have much to say. As we close this journey through 30 remarkable discoveries, let's carry forward that sense of awe. Whether it's a lost painting in a flea market or a forgotten city beneath the waves, the past is always ready to surprise us if we're willing to look. From forgotten masterpieces to technological marvels, these 30 discoveries prove that antique art is never static. It's a living dialogue with history. Each find cracks open another door to the past, revealing stories we never knew were waiting to be told. Whether it's the haunting gaze of a long-lost Leonardo emerging from layers of grime, or the whispers of ancient prayers echoing through the stones of Lalibela, these artifacts don't just belong to museums, they belong to all of us, connecting threads in the vast tapestry of human creativity. Think about the moments we've uncovered together, a farmer's shovel striking terracotta warriors still gleaming with forgotten colors, a flea market bargain turning out to be a Renoir, or the Antikythera Mechanism's gears spinning celestial secrets across 2,000 years. These aren't just strokes of luck, they're reminders that history isn't a closed book. It's a puzzle with pieces still scattered, waiting for patient hands and curious minds to fit them into place. Every restoration, every archaeological dig, every stroke of a conservator's brush is part of an ongoing conversation, one where the past speaks back in pigments, chisel marks, and lines of faded ink. What makes these discoveries so thrilling isn't just their age or their beauty, it's their stubborn refusal to stay silent. The Salvator Mundi's debated brushstrokes, the Staffordshire Hoard's golden whispers of Anglo-Saxon kings, even the Voynich Manuscript's uncrackable code, they all challenge us to look closer, question deeper, and rethink what we thought we knew. Art history isn't just about admiring what's been found. It's about wondering what's still out there, hiding in plain sight or buried beneath centuries of dust. So as we wrap up this journey, here's the real takeaway. The next great discovery could be anywhere. Maybe it's a painting tucked behind your grandmother's attic trunk, a fragment of pottery in a farmer's field, or a manuscript mislabeled in some university archive. The past isn't done surprising us yet. Which of these 30 revelations left you in awe? Drop your favorites in the comments. We'd love to hear which stories resonated most. And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's hidden corners, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an adventure. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your curiosity sharp. The past is out there, waiting to be found.